Hey there guys, Spets here again, and we're going to go through another patch rundown, this time for patch 5.9. It's a fairly short patch this time, so we're just going to get right into it. The main things I want to talk about are Ashe and Cinderhulk. Those are the major changes this patch. So the first thing that they changed or added is a new functionality to attack move. It's an option, so if you still want to use the old attack move, you can turn it off. I think it's on by default, not 100% sure, but what I'm talking about attack move is when you shift right click or you press A and you left click, so that's the attack move. And what that usually did was it would attack the first target on your way to wherever you clicked. Unless it's a champion or minion or like an exact target that you hit, that's what it would always do. So this though, it changes it to attacking the thing that's closest to where you attack moved. So let's say it's a minion. You hit that exact minion, or you hit a minion closest to where you clicked, is what I just said. And the main reason for this is just in case, like let's say you miss a target by, I think the example that Riot used was 3 pixels, you won't accidentally hit a minion and lose a trade and maybe even die. Like things like that are frustrating. It's just an option, so if you don't like it, you can turn it off, but I think it's a new thing that people like. You can take a look at it for a more in-depth look at it, and really I would just try it out in like a custom game if you're really unsure of like what this means. But it just makes it a little easier for people who might slightly miss their 8 right click. It's just, my opinion, is just like a smoother way to play the game. So I like this change. It'll really help AD carries as well. There's also a change to combat text and the way it works. So the first change is big numbers, man. I guess what this means is, you guys can read it if you want, but the larger numbers, the larger damage values. So let's say you get a crit like for like 420 damage. That would show up as a larger number than, let's say, your normal attack for whatever, like 200 something damage or 200 damage. So that's just to like make it clearer. It's not a big deal. It's not a balance change. It's just a nice UI change. Another thing is like to the way numbers show up with like damage over time abilities or like multi-hit abilities that they're talking about. So let's say a Shyvana Q, sorry. So before it would just show you the individual ticks or the individual hits of that ability. Now it kind of adds it all up so you can see the total damage value, which is, in my opinion, is more important. So I like that change. What else? I'm not exactly sure what this means, but include on-hit procs will control with the original damage hit. So I'm not 100% sure of this one. Again, it's not a balance change. It's just like the way damage values show up when you do damage to something. So I would take a look at this. I'm not 100% sure, but in my opinion, not too important. This is what I mainly want to talk about this time around. Ashe. It's quite complicated how much they changed about her, and I want to just talk in detail about every little change. So these changes aren't too big, but the abilities are the biggest difference. So basic attack missile speed is increased by 500, just a minor buff to the missile speed. This makes last hitting much easier, makes your damage apply faster, things like that. It doesn't actually increase the attack speed, it just increases how fast it travels to the target. You guys understand. The attack speed growth stat has been decreased, and you may be wondering, like, Ashe is already like not that great of a DPS carry. But really, if you think about it, and if you look at the actual values, most people don't even know this, but Ashe, along I think with Vayne, maybe Sivir, had the fastest or the highest attack speed growth rate. They were both the same at like 6 point something. So if I have it open, let's go back to it. So right now, let's go to the champion. So before it was higher. So 6.658, which is fairly high as a base attack speed, plus 56.6. They nerfed this, obviously. Let's go to Vayne real quick. Vayne has a very high one. And this is exactly what Ashe's was before, 68%. People didn't realize that mainly because Ashe didn't have other steroid abilities. She didn't have something like Vayne, which Tumble increased her damage. The W that Vayne had true damage, and the ult. So Vayne had a lot of steroids to help her increase her damage. Ashe didn't. But that doesn't mean she doesn't have good base stats. But now that there has been changes and she does get a steroid, they want to kind of tone it down just to be a little bit more safe. They tone down her attack speed growth rate, which I think is fine for now. I would rather have a champion that's a little weaker early on, and I don't think Ashe is going to be weak at all, than make it like OP and like ruin solo queue for a week or two. Another change is to the way critical strike works with Ashe. You have to look at this in the context of how they changed her passive. Is it a passive? Yeah, okay. Well, we'll talk about it later. But instead of having a 2.0 critical strike modifier, it's 1.1. So the reason for this is, again, I'll explain later. It doesn't make sense right now, but you guys will understand. So they changed her passive to be Frost Shot. So Frost Shot used to be Ashe's Q, which was just a slow. It was simply a slow on each auto attack that would take mana from you. Now it no longer costs mana. It scales a little slower though, so it's 5% at level 1, and it scales at level 4, 7, 10, 13, 16. You guys can take a look at this for 2 seconds. So the 2 seconds I'm pretty sure is the exact same. Basic attacks always critically strike. So what this means is that you get a slight buff early on to how much damage you do. You don't have that level 1 like first hit damage that you would get with Focus. I think it was called Ranger's Focus. So that's kind of gone, that level 1 strength, but over time you're actually going to be doing way more damage. And you guys will see, I think she'll be close to a hyper carry even if you like really look at the numbers. So it starts at 0.1, but it increases at times as time goes on. So the critical damage modifier scales with how much crit chance you actually have. And I think this is actually how all critical chance or AD carries should work. Just like, I mean, just people in general, because I mean, anyone can get critical strike if they want. It's not always effective, but you can. And I think it should work in the same way that Ashe has kind of been changed into, which is you don't do the 2.0 damage, but you always sort of critically strike. It's just your critical chance increases how much damage each auto attack does. So you have your base AD, let's say it's 100. With Ashe, you would do 110 because you have that slightly increased crit damage modifier. But as you get crit chance, this crit damage modifier increases to just have a consistent higher damage. So let's say you have a Shiv. Shiv is 20%, I'm pretty sure. Crit chance. You would do 1.3 damage of your AD. So like if you have 100, it would be 130 damage. With let's say an IE in there, you would get another 20 damage. So you guys understand, right? It scales much more consistently. So instead of having, like, let's say, no crits 3 times in a row when you have IE Shiv, sometimes it might happen. It's not very likely, but it happens. And that's the problem with like this inconsistent, like chance-based kind of a gameplay. But with Ashe, you don't have that anymore. You either you do consistent damage with each auto attack, and it's like better in my opinion. Instead of having either like 3 crits in a row, instant killing someone, or having no crits and just losing out in a fight. This is how it should be, in my opinion, at least. So I like this change to Ashe, and I think Riot should follow suit eventually with other AD carries. Similar to how they did with Dodge. Dodge used to be a very inconsistent mechanic. You would either dodge many, so like with Jax, it was like the biggest beneficiary of this. You would dodge many auto attacks in a row and completely just dumpster auto attack based champions. And sometimes you wouldn't dodge. Well, with Jax, you would almost... It was really frustrating. You would dodge very often. So it just removes that inconsistency in the game, which is very good for a competitive game that League of Legends has become. It's become massive. So I think this is a needed change to every AD carry, but I like that they started with Ashe. So let's move on with that. Ranger's Focus is Ashe's new Q. Let me see. Okay, so there's a few like components to it. The first part of it is that it has a kind of steroid mechanic to it. So at 1 stack, I think, so let's say when you slow someone with an auto attack or volley, you get a stack of Ranger's Focus or whatever it's called. And at 5 stacks, I think it's 5 stacks. Yeah, so at 5 stacks, if you wait for your 5 stacks, you can activate it and you get an attack speed steroid. And you also get, what is it? You get a 20% extra slow along with your passive. That's a consistent slow. And you also get this flurry ability, which is right here. So if 5 stacks are consumed, Ashe's basic attacks are replaced by a flurry of arrows resulting in 1.15 damage up to 1.35. So it scales up as time goes on. Well, actually, no, as you put skills in it, because this is different than her passive. So it just increases her damage. Again, consistent damage for those 4 seconds increased. Again, another steroid along with her passive. Very nice. I was trying it out in PB. I think it was a little higher in value on PB. I think it was maybe 1.45 or something like that, 1.5 at level 5. And it was an insane steroid. Along with how much it slowed, it added another slow along with your regular frost shot slow, the passive. It was just insane. Like, unless they had a gap closer, they kind of were just dead. That's how it worked. Something to keep in mind is you don't need the 5 stacks to get the attack speed. The only reason you would want 5 stacks is to get this flurry attack, this flurry like addition to your steroid, which is very strong. You can use it on towers. It works on anything basically. Very powerful. Something that I think will make Ashe close to a hyper carry along with her her passive frost shot, the crit strike passive. Sorry. The mana, there's a mana cost to it since it's no longer a toggle. So 50 mana. It's a long cooldown, so like a lot of steroid abilities, long cooldown. I want to check just to be sure. What is Kog'Maw's cooldown? Well, wiki. Just to have a comparison. I like to do this. So 17-second cooldown. So it's in line with a lot of other steroids. Let me try one more thing. This is the other main one that I like to check. So 20 seconds. So it's right there in line with the other steroid abilities. I think it's fair. So just a great steroid, great slowing tool, great just everything. You guys will see. It's really powerful. In my opinion, Ashe can be a hybrid carry at this point when this is up. So we'll see though how it is used in practice. Volley has been slightly changed, so decreased mana cost. Nice change. You don't have to rely on mana regen too much if you ever got that. This also is true because you don't have to use a Q to slow. This is the major change that I like about it, which is the cooldown has been reduced to level 1. And the reason Ashe really sucked early game and her laning phase really was bad was because Volley was just such a long cooldown. 16 what is it, seconds for your only damage ability is awful. That's really, really bad. I'm just going to say that right now. That's really bad. You can't do much with that. You basically have to stay at range with Ashe and just like poke with volley and auto attack from range, and like her abilities allowed her to do that. But if they got into range of you, you were just kind of in trouble. So this helps her laning phase a little. The arrows fired is 9, so the reason for that is so it's kind of like harder to miss your volley since there are more arrows and less space in between the arrows. So it's nice in that sense. The missile width is also higher again, so it's harder to miss. Enemies now can block multiple arrows though. So let's say a tank is in your way, like right in your face, you can block all the arrows and still just take 1 tick of damage from it. So that's really nice, let's say for an engage kind of champion, because Ashe is just all about kiting. So that's kind of like a counterplay kind of thing, but it's a buff slash nerf, mostly a buff. In almost every sense, this is a buff to Ashe. So Ashe mains, are going to be very happy about this. I'm very happy about this because I like Ashe. I think she was stronger than people actually thought she was. She just had a weak laning phase. Yeah, basically that weak laning phase, and she had a lack of damage, but she has both those now, in my opinion. So I'm excited to see this. Next change is to Hawkshot. It is no longer like capped on range. It is global. Very cool. So if let's say Baron, you're worried that Baron might be taken, and you don't have your blue trinket up, this will be useful for that. No matter where you are, you might be in base. It does have a travel time, so it's not as good as like something like Clairvoyance or blue trinket. But again, it's global, so I think it's a good change, and you have to think about it in the other context, the context of the whole change. Now stores up to 2 charges upon reaching rank 2. So this is actually important to note. Since you keep this at you keep it at rank 1 almost throughout the whole game, usually on Ashe. So this might actually incentivize people to grab 2 points into it after maxing volley and maybe getting a point in Q. Just to get a second point, and then you max Q. That's just to get to those 2 charges similar to how Kalista has it, and so you can just be more safe when farming, and you can scout around for your team for objectives. So it's a very nice change. I like this change to make it so that you have to have it at rank 2, so you can't just have it at 1 point. So you have to make that decision. Do you want the extra utility from Vision, or do you want the extra damage from another point in Q? So I think that's a nice kind of trade-off that they put in. Ammo recharge rate, so that's like how long it takes to recharge. So you have those 2 charges. Similar to how Kalista's worked, you can have 2 charges for W. Cooldown between casts, so you can't just use it right after another. Not a big deal. I mean, still just better overall. The only minor nerf to this is that it no longer generates gold. So that is a pain, because you would often, even if you were behind on Ashe in CS, you would actually be even simply because you had this passive, and it sucks. But if you look at the whole change to Ashe, she is much stronger. So I don't care if this is removed. I think it's fine. It'd actually be kind of frustrating to be against Ashe and know that you're ahead in CS compared to her, and she would still be at the same gold value. So I think it's a nice change. Enchanted Crystal Arrow, her ultimate, now no longer applies a 50% slow at all levels, and now is based on your frost shot value. So it's 5%, 35%. So it scales. It is a nerf to her ultimate, though. Keep that in mind. You mainly use it to stun the target, like the main target you're going for. The AoE slow is it is a really strong part of it, but it isn't the main component. So I think it's okay. Was it necessary? Probably not, but whatever. We'll see. I think Ashe is in a much better place now. Actually be very, very contested over the next few weeks, depending on how things go. Akali has been changed slightly. A few things that I don't know if it will help her, but we'll just go over them. So E, the Crescent Slash, her AoE farming tool, or used to be used for proccing her mark, her Q, but no longer does that. So to compensate, they made it so it was lower cooldown at every rank. So the main thing I'm looking at is these later ranks where it's like 2 and 1 second. You can do this constantly, so if you want to farm, this will help, but I want to actually look at this. I took a look at like the energy values, so I'm just looking at, like, let's say level 5, since you're going to max this second after Q most times. 40 energy is quite a lot. So in a team fight, it'll be tough to actually use this constantly. It will increase your damage though, so that's a nice thing. They increase the ability power ratio as well. But one of the weaknesses of this is also that it's a physical damage ability, which really confuses me. But I guess with a lot of older champions, their EP ratio, their ratios and their actual damage types don't always match up. But I think it's a nice change. So you have to keep in mind, this is what they call it is like an energy dump, where you have to make the decision whether you want the extra damage or you want the energy to use on another ability like Q. And it's again like a decision you have to make, and I think it's the way to go with a lot of abilities that are that they're buffing in terms of like damage or whatever. You guys understand, right? I think mainly it'll be used for really good for farming, like much faster farming. You just Q, E, get the energy back with your auto attack, stuff like that. The main buff, though, in my opinion, that will help Akali is this one, Shadow Dance, her ultimate, which is her, you guys know, her dash, the thing that makes Akali so hard to deal with as like a carry. She now dashes through her target, so oftentimes you're chasing the target. They're not going to be running towards you. I mean, unless you want to try to counterplay and juke an Akali, which you're just going to be running. Let's just say that. So you dash through them to where they're running most oftentimes. So this actually helps her keep on her target. Very, Very strong, actually. I think they did this change to also Katarina and Zed. They made you appear behind the target, so again, you could just be in a position where you could keep chasing them. I think this will... I'm going to be hating seeing Akali in solo queue. I think this will bring her back, though. People have been crying for a long time just because her E no longer procs her Q, but that's how it used to be, and I think she'll be fine now, to be honest. She'll be very problematic in solo queue mainly. I don't think she'll be back in competitive at all. She's just too easily shut down with pink wards, so that's my opinion, though. Nerf to Annie's auto attack range. So I read through this, and this was mainly to hurt her, I guess, mid lane power. She isn't using the mid lane. I don't know if I've seen a game of her in the mid lane in competitive in a while. Maybe in China, since LPL basically plays everything. She has really good AP ratios. I'm actually confused why she isn't played more, because her AP ratios are, I think, some of the highest in the game. They're like 0.8, 0.85, stuff like that. Let's go through them real quick, just to show you how good they actually are. Her base damages have been nerfed since she's been playing it in the support role for a while, but she has really good like AP ratios, like 0.8, 0.85, 0.8, plus 2.0 with Tibbers that will proc at least once. That's like a 1.0 AP ratio. She has massive AP ratios. The problem with her is that unlike other burst mages, she has a shorter range on her abilities, or she doesn't have a gap close. She relies a lot on flash. I still think she's really powerful in the mid lane. For those like flash, Annie, Tibber, just instant killing like teams. So this won't be a big deal. It kind of removes Annie from being that like really long range annoying poke champion. I know a lot of people, what they did in mid lane was, or even in bot lane, they just got AD and they just auto attacked the person down just because of her long range. And I guess that removes that to an extent, which is, I think, fine. She's still going to be a ridiculous burst mage. Hecarim changes, so the way they changed the way in which you can use his Q. Before in lane, you could spam it non-stop early on, and against melee champions, it was actually very hard to deal with. Basically, what you can do is Hecarim, if you have like vision control, if you have jungle pressure top lane, is you just stand on top of the creep wave and deny CS, and most melee champions cannot trade with you. If you do that, he just Qs, and he will win because of the high base damage of his early points in Q. So this makes it actually harder to do. You can't constantly do that. I mean, you get a flask, but this at least it makes it a little easier to face. He's still going to be able to do that to an extent, but it's just going to be harder at early levels. But to compensate, they made his Q deal full damage to monsters. I think he will be seen in the jungle for sure. He kind of has a weaker early game, but once he gets some items and some cooldown reduction, he's very powerful. As you guys have seen, he's been played many times in the top lane. So I think he will be played more in the jungle now. Maybe it's still top. I would have to see, but probably both at this point, just because of this change. They have nerfed Kalista's passive, and no longer gives her an extra boost to her dash when she dashes backwards, like when she's kiting mainly backwards. It doesn't give that bonus, and I think that's a nice change. She's hard enough as it is to like catch. The main way you kill Kalista and the main reason like she ever really dies is if you just have a point and click like CC, like Lysandra ult or Urgot ult, you just flash ult, she's dead. So that's the main way people kill Kalista, but this makes it at least a little easier so you can counterplay it without that. You don't absolutely need it. I mean, she's still going to be really good at kiting regardless, so I think it's an okay change. It's not going to hurt her that much, though. Let's see. So they nerfed Morgana in a way that I was kind of confused about, mainly because I believe that the strength of Morgana is in her Q, her E, and her ultimate. Tormented Soil isn't really why Morgana's strong, let's be honest. In the mid lane, or in the top lane, if she was ever played there, if you guys have seen EDG versus SKT, she's just really good at pushing, and you often max that first when you were in mid lane and top lane, just because of how, or at least put 3 points in it, just so you can push really easily. And they just nerfed the earlier values of that. So since support Morganas would often just leave that to last, so they max Q and then max E afterwards. So this makes her early pushing weaker, which I think is fine. She's really strong in the bot lane, especially with certain hyper carry team comps. So like Morgana, Lulu. It's just really hard to pin down that AD carry. So I think this is a decent change. It's not a big deal. This won't hurt like laning Morgana. So I'm fine with that. So this is a change that was similar to both, or that was shared by Nasus and Renekton. So I'm just gonna look at the ultimates right now. Before, I don't think it was actually a bug. I think this was actually just the functionality of the abilities. But maybe I'm wrong and I'm just like not trusting right with what they're saying here. Fixed a bug where it could take up to 0.25 seconds to grant the bonus health. I think this was always the case. There was always like a slight cast time to it, where if you didn't preemptively do it and got stunned or something and killed, bursted down, it just wouldn't proc. So I don't know why they say it's bug change or bug fix. Whatever. It just instantly gives you the health now, which is fine for both Nasus and Renekton. So they can have some outplay potential in even those very close situations, which I think is fine. They're not in the greatest of places right now, and especially in competitive. Nocturne's E base damage has been increased, so early levels has been increased by 30, then 20, then 10. Same value here, and then wait a minute. Is that the same value? Huh. Oh, okay, so it's 50 at each. Okay, so I see. Okay. So now it just goes up by 40 each rank, except for the last rank. So I guess they just wanted to make sure that it goes up in damage at all values, because it would actually be lower if they kept increasing by 40. Which is interesting. This isn't very common in League, but they do sometimes mess with the values at like later ranks. So this went up by 40, 40, 40, then 60. Which I think is fine. Nocturne needs some help. He's really strong in like those team comps where you are trying to dive the backline and deny vision. I really want to see Nocturne again, but I don't know if until like tanks become slightly weaker, which I think they will be quite weak after this next patch, he won't be coming back into the game. His early level ranks in Ultimate are, they don't provide enough distance for him to close the gap to make those plays, but that's my opinion. His ultimate is the weaker thing in his kit. But this gives him a little extra early damage. You often keep this, I think until level 10 you keep this at rank 1, so it's a nice boost in damage. It also gives him this functionality, or I guess it now properly works where if, let's say, a different champion would be slowing, I mean, sorry, not slowing, fearing your enemy. So let's say they use Hecarim's Onslaught of Shadows, Shaco's Jack in the Box, or what is it? Fiddle's Fear. If they're feared, you get extra move speed towards them. So that's a nice, kind of has that synergy. Maybe they're gonna have some Fiddlestick Hecarim duo jungle top synergies. I don't know, but it's just a nice functionality change. Whatever. Not a big deal. True to his Viking origins. So this is a buff to Olaf's ultimate. I think Olaf's in a better place than people actually think he is. I think he still has that stigma of he's been Olafed or whatever, but they've slowly started to make him better over the past year. I'm trying to remember when they started doing this, but let's look it up. Just so I don't talk out of my ass. So whenever you guys want to see changes to champions, go to the LoL wiki and go down to the patch history. Okay, so let's see where they started it. Increase, no. Okay, so this was the nerfs, I think. Trying to remember. So they've been giving Olaf buffs for a while. Still not really understanding why people aren't playing him. So the cost was reduced. So I mean, they started this back in, what the heck? Okay, so the slow was reduced here. Cooldown was okay, so there's a buff right here. Increase, so a buff right here. Buff right here. Cooldown reduction. Now grants, so it's been quite a while since they've changed him. But I think like for this longest time he's been actually quite strong. He's not as first pick, first ban, 100% first pick, first ban worthy as he used to be, but he's still really strong. And this actually gives him even more strength in the sense that it's easier to stick to his target. So try to dive on the back line, you get CC'd, instantly pop it, and give you that little extra bit of movement speed, similar to how what is it? Not QSS, Mercurial Scimitar gives you that burst of movement speed, so you can get to wherever you want, or like you can run away. And I think honestly, Olaf is going to start being played. Tank items are starting to get better. Black Cleaver is a really good item on him. So I don't know. I'm waiting to see him in competitive. I know he's solo key worthy. That's 100% for sure. But we'll just have to see how people play him out, how people build him. I think full tank with like one damage item, or even full tank you can do, is the way to go with Olaf. And I think he's very worthy of like I don't know about a top pick just yet, but he's definitely up there. So we talked about Renekton a little with how his ult is automatically just activated when he ults instead of cast time. But there's also a change to Ruthless Predator and how it works. So first change is the bonus range. So this is similar to what they did to both Mordekaiser and Yorick. So both of their Qs were given extra bonus range when they activated. And in my opinion, these are nice changes because they make it so they don't have to be right on top of the champion to use that ability. This will actually help Renekton so he isn't just like kited all day. And with something like a CC, this is actually extremely important because you need that extra little range will just get you that ability to stun the person so your team can follow up, or like you can follow up on a gank or do more damage. You know what I mean. There's also a change to how empowered casts are in W. Whenever he's casting, you guys see he doesn't move, right? Because it is like sort of like it's not a channel, but you just can't move. That's reduced with the empowered one, simply because it's 3 strikes instead of 2, I think it is. So it's reduced to 0.5 instead of 0.75. This is a nice change. I don't know if this will change Renekton too much. I think with the new Black Cleaver is actually really strong. I haven't seen too much of him though. He doesn't provide as much utility as tanks, but he's still that frontline annoyance that he used to be. I guess because of how the TP isn't the greatest of abilities on him compared to Ignite, I understand, but I still think he's not as bad as people think he is. I don't know. This will help him even more though, so we'll see in the coming weeks. I think he should be played more though. I think he's good as a frontline off tank. He still has that damage, especially if you get at least one damage item like a Black Cleaver and then just go full tank. Like, you'll be in a good spot. Same with Olaf. Nerfs to Riven, yay. I know a lot of people are happy about this. Very few people are not happy. Just mainly the people who just play Riven, like box, Riven mains, are going to be a little sad, but these were kind of needed. I don't know if these are the right changes, but there has been a slight nerf to her mobility. That's still not a big deal because 340 is a really high movement speed, or like as it is. 345 I think is the highest you can have base movement speed. There's a few other champions that have this, but it's okay that this is nerfed because she already has so much mobility in her E and her Q, so it won't hurt her as much, but it just tones her down a little in lane. Wind Slash, the missile speed has been reduced, so it allows you a larger window of opportunity to outplay with like flash or other mobility spells. So I think this is a good change. I think Riven needs to be tuned down. Like, she's not the strongest in competitive because of how tanks are just so useful in team fights, but she still needs to be toned down in the sense that in solo queue she gets ahead. It's so hard to deal with. I don't know. That's what I think, at least. So Ryze no longer one-shots people with Morgana. If you guys saw this, Ryze, there was a bug with him where if you eat someone and you had Morgana, and let's say if they bounced between them and like a champion, or so mainly you and them, or them and a minion, but a minion would usually die immediately. So it's usually between you and them. If you walk up to them and you use E with Morgana, it would just constantly proc, even though it is, in a sense, an AoE ability. It would still proc as if it was a single target spell. So that's this change right here. Screw Morgana Ryze. That's silly. Don't do that, please. Stacking Arcane's Mastery icon as grays to differentiate charging and ready state. So this is similar to how Kassadin's E is, I think, grayed out until you have it like stacked up. So it's just a clarity kind of change. Desperate Power fixed a bug where casting a spell as Desperate Power's buff expired caused that spell to not go on cooldown. Just a bug change, so his spells go on cooldown when they're supposed to. That's all. Changes to Tristana's E. I think this is a nice change. Put her more in line with where she should be. Mainly this one. This one is a nice, but I think it's mainly this one. So I'll just go through them. So bonus damage per stack. So it's only a 5% increase, but you have to understand that this goes up to 4 times, I think it is. Let me check just to be sure. I don't want to, again, talk out of my ass. I'm pretty sure it stacks up to only 4 times, unless they change that as well. Explosive charge. Yeah, 4 times still. Okay. I know on PBE there are some changes to maybe 5 times, but I don't know if they did that. So at 4 stacks, it would do 20% extra damage, so 120% of your AD and damage. So I think that's really strong compared to 100%. This will make getting towers even easier, and maybe give that extra damage that Tristana needs to finish off targets. I think it's a good change. But the main change I'm happy about is the cast time is now reduced by attack speed. So before, when Tristana was, before she was reworked, she had a really smooth kind of like rotation. So like in a trade, let's say, she would auto attack, E, auto attack, and that would just be easy damage. Not the greatest of poke or damage, but she has a way of trading and it's smooth, right? And even in team fights, you can use that as well. With the new E though, there's a cast time, and it's just like clunky. It just feels really clunky. You actually have to stop your DPS to do that, and it's really frustrating because like she has a DPS carry with a little burst, but this just slows it down. So now with attack speed, the cast time is just faster. I want to see how this actually feels because there are no values to like how much faster it can be. So maybe like when her Q is up, 2.0 attack speed plus, she'll just have a really fast cast time, and it won't stop her from doing the DPS she needs to do. So I think this is an absolutely necessary change. This isn't too big of a deal. I mean, it is nice, but this is a necessary change. Trundle has been buffed slightly, mainly his Pillar of Ice. Excuse me. So there's a 5% buff to all ranks of Pillar of Ice, the slow. Not a big deal, I'll be completely honest. It means absolutely nothing. The main thing here is the knockback distance. So whenever you use your E as Trundle Pillar of Ice, it would knock back the enemy away from the pillar. This actually increases it. So in a way, this actually acts as if similar to maybe like a Ziggs Satchel Charge, or a much smaller Gragas ult. Like, so it knocks them away from that center even farther, and so it would maybe help set up ganks or initiate team fights, run up and E champions out of position into your team. So it might be a nice change to him. I don't think it will help him that much, to be honest. Still gets kited. Again, like I said last patch, I think it was, any champion that doesn't have an instant gap closer has a lot of trouble nowadays. It's just very difficult unless there's other champions to help set him up. I don't think he's enough in his own right. His ultimate is very strong against tanks, but like actually doing the damage that he wants to do with his Q and his W auto attack speed, it's not enough. He needs help from other champions. So I think in a specific team comp, I think he'll be really good. like an engage, disengage, maybe like Sejuani, the ice champions, I guess. I don't know. We'll have to see though. I like Trundle. I just don't think he fits in that great in a lot of team comps. Xin Zhao, so there was a change to his ultimate, and now applies a 0.75 second stun to knocked back targets. So that's since his ult is such a huge AoE, this can be quite a big buff to him. And mainly I say that because it just depends. If it applies as they're being knocked back as well, it won't be that big of a buff. If it applies after they're knocked back, this is actually a pretty big buff in team fights. I'll just have to see when it applies. Yeah, they're not specific, so I just want to see this before I say anything. It's either a really good buff or just not that big of a deal. Zed can't teleport back to his Deathmark Shadow instantly. So instead of being able to instantly teleport back by pressing R and R again, it's for like safety measures and then using your combo, you have to wait a second. And I don't think this was necessary. I'm going to be 100% honest. In today's meta, I don't know if tanks are gonna disappear, he might be fine, but Zed was in a position recently where he either had to get ahead early, like by a lot. He had to get really far ahead. Sorry, that's what I was trying to say. Or he's screwed in team fights. Split push just doesn't work as well anymore. Team fights are king. You need to be a good team fight champion if you want to do anything. And Zed can't do that when there are 2 to 3 tanks on the team, and late game they're champions with Hourglass and what is it called? What's the other item? QSS. He gets shut down so hard in team fights late game that I feel he needs that early game, like, I don't know, early game power. This won't detract from it as much as people might think, but it just was an unnecessary change. He did not need this. That's why I feel like changes should only be made if you actually need them to be changed to actually fix something. There was nothing that needed to be fixing here. Zed is supposed to be a 1v1 champion early on, especially, and he gets that really like weak power trough in the late game because he can't team fight very effectively. You have to be very good at Zed and have a team that's very coordinated to be good at team fighting with Zed. So I don't think this change was needed. I don't know, whatever. Enchantment to Cinderhulk. So there's a pretty big nerf to Cinderhulk, in my opinion. So we're going to go through this first before we do this. So Cinderhulk's Immolate passive no longer increases in damage while in combat. So it used to be 16, so you guys see the values, right? 16 plus 1 damage per champion level, and it scaled up to 24 plus 1.5. Now it's 1.5 plus 0.6. So it's weaker at all points in the game, basically, to champions. And I think this is fine. I don't know if this huge of a nerf was needed, but I think this is fine. Then to compensate, they made the damage to monsters stronger by 100%. So it would do 30 plus 1.2 damage per champion level to monsters. So it's actually better in the early game. Like immediately when you get it, it's good for clearing. So that's what it's mainly meant for now. The damage to champions is like a secondary thing. And I think this is fine. So Sunfire is in a better place now compared to Cinderhulk. I think this is fine. Tanks are mainly there for the utility and the front line that they bring to a team, not the damage. And the champions who got this already had some significant damage, so I think this was a necessary change. I don't know if this much of a change was needed, but I'm fine with it. Tanks were just a little too strong. We'll have to see though. Okay, so Skirmisher Sabre has also been nerfed, so this will probably shut down this top lane Skirmishers thing that people are doing. With the nerf to Cinderhulk and the nerf to Skirmishers, I think it will be nerfed. Skirmisher is still a good item, but it no longer okay. So this is just a bug fix. In my opinion, it's a bug fix. These are the things that are bug fixes. No longer reduces incoming true damage from the challenge target. You should never have reduction of true damage ever. That's why Alistar ultimate, a good counter to it is Ignite if he's at low health, or true damage abilities like Irelia W or Olaf E, things like that. So this is a good bug fix. This is the main nerf though. Challenging Smite debuff for duration. So the damage reduction that the person that you smite does to you is reduced by 2 seconds. 6 seconds is a long time. I think exhaust is like 3 seconds, 2 seconds, something like that. So you can see how big of a difference it is. It's like a mini exhaust on a much lower cooldown and a much higher duration. So I think this is a needed change. Skirmishers was absurdly strong. And the last change that I'm going to talk about is Dragon. Dragon, here, let me just open it up. So this is I think this is the old value, 75 attack damage, 0.45 attack speed. So yeah, 0.45 attack speed, 75 attack damage. Let's compare that to, so keep in mind that there's also that extra percent of current health damage that Dragon does, but just comparing just the base damages to Gromp. Gromp has 83 attack damage and 0.63 attack speed, so higher values for both attack speed and attack damage. I know it's kind of like not a good idea to compare it because he does have that percentage damage, but he is an epic monster. I feel like he should do more damage, and that's why they did this. They increased attack speed. The attack speed is still lower than Gromp, but the base damage is higher, and so this makes it harder for champions like Nunu, Warwick. I think they'll still be able to do it if they have a little bit of backup, or if they want to risk that early game Dragon to solo Dragon. So makes it just a little more risky. I think this is necessary. Yeah, that's basically all I wanted to say. It's a good change. It was just kind of silly how fast people could do Dragon. It's just so weak, but whatever. Something that's in the right direction. So that's all I really wanted to talk about, guys. Hope you like this. I know it was kind of longer than I was originally hoping, but it was actually quite a few champion changes, to be honest. So hopefully you guys are excited for the Ashe changes, the Cinderhulk changes. I don't know if tanks will be out of the meta or not, but we'll see. But besides that, I'm done, guys. Thanks again for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.